Hey, it's Larissa from Plum Diddle, and today I'm going to show you how to make these adorable felted ball ornaments. This is such a fun and simple project that you can do that uses painting with wool techniques. You're going to be so surprised by how easy it is, and I just know you're going to love it. All of the materials needed to make this project can be found in our kit. The link to that is in the description below. And the awesome thing about this project is how much you get to use your creativity with it. I'm going to show you how I did our 3 designs, but you can feel free to change it up. You could always do all 3 of your ornaments the same design, or choose different colors than I did, whatever you like. Of course, before we get started, we do have to go over some safety things. Felting needles are very sharp and quite brittle, so there are some things that you have to keep in mind while you're working. The first thing is always watch what you're doing. It's so easy if you're getting distracted to poke yourself while you're not looking, so just keep your eyes on your project while you're working the felt. Right along with that, try to keep your fingers out of the way while you're working. Additionally, when you are working the felt with your needle, avoid twisting or bending the needle while it's in your project. Move the needle straight in and out instead. Then finally, make sure you're keeping your needles put away when you are not using them. The needle tip can be stored safely inside your needle handle by turning it around like this. And you also have a vial of needles in your kit that you can store the needles in as well. And now that that's out of the way, let's get started by making this hanger. This is going to be done on all 3 of your ornaments. I wanted my hanger to be a blend between the 2 colors of red that are in my kit, and to blend them, I just took a little bit of each color that I wanted, and I laid them on top of each other like this. Then I held the opposite ends of my little bundle of wool roving, and I pulled them apart. Then I layered those 2 halves on top of each other, and I pulled apart again. After you do that a few times, you'll start to notice that the color becomes more homogeneous and blended. It's totally up to you how blended you want it. If you want it to be a little piecier, you can leave it still kind of unblended. And this is something you can do anytime you want a mix of 2 colors. Once that's the color you're happy with, then you can move on to your string. Make a loop with the string and tie a little knot in the end. Then set that knot right down on top of the felt ball. We're going to cover it with the wool we just blended, and that's what's going to attach it to the ball. So roll that wool up a little bit and set it down on top of the string, making sure that it's covering the knot. Then grab your needle and make a few pokes around the wool to kind of tack it to the ball. Quick side note. The way felting needles work is they have little notches or burrs along the length of the needle, and those work to tangle the fibers of the wool together. So what's really happening here is we're using the needle to tangle the fibers from the ball with the fibers from the roving. And at first it's going to be a really loose connection. The more you poke it, the stronger that connection will be. So keep poking the wool with your needle, and as you work, try to kind of sculpt that into the shape that you want it. A nice round shape looks really good. A good way to think about sculpting the wool is to identify the spots that are sticking out the most and focus on that area with the needle. Keep going with this until it feels really sturdy. You want it to be able to support the weight of the ball, so give the string a couple of tugs to make sure it's really on there good. And then once it is, you're done with the hanger. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the 3 different designs. And we're going to start with this berries and vines motif. I chose to use the dark green wool roving for the vines. And I just started by taking out a section and stretching out the end of it so it was light and wispy. If you take that little section and you twist it slightly, you'll see that it almost makes like a string. And that's how we're going to make the vines. So starting anywhere on the ball, use your needle to felt that end into the ball. When you have the end of your wool roving secured to the ball, you can twist your bundle a little bit to get that string, and then poke your needle along that line to secure it to the ball. When you run out of any line to felt, then you can just pull out a little bit more of the wool roving and twist that bit. Our goal is to make one long swirling and twisting line all around the ball that meets back where it started. So start to curve your line as you felt it, and then just keep twisting it, filling any negative space that you see on the ball. This step does not have to be perfect at all, so don't worry, but you do eventually want the line to end up back where you started. So just felt that end really well and then pull the extra wool away. The next step I think is super fun, and that's to create the leaves that go on the vine. For each leaf, pull out just a little tiny bit of the wool roving and roll it between your hands like Play-Doh to make a little ball. Then place it anywhere along that line that you just made for the vine and felt it into the ball. And then you just do that over and over again until you have a good amount of leaves that you're happy with. This can take a while, but rolling a big batch of leaves and then felting them all at once helps a lot. And once you have that done, you can move on to making your berries. We're going to do the berries in clusters of 3, so get 3 little pieces of wool that are about the same size and roll them in your hands, just like we did the leaves. Then find any spot on your ball with a big enough blank space to accommodate the 3 berries. Put your little ball down in that blank space and felt it on. Repeat this process until you have berries everywhere you'd like them to be on your ball. Okay, here's one of my favorite things about felting, and specifically about painting with wool. You can use the wool roving to create highlight and shadow on your piece, and we're going to do a little bit of that here. We're going to start with a highlight on the berries. So just take a little piece of the white roving and place it right on your berry. Use your needle to felt that in, and don't be afraid to keep it super teeny tiny. A little highlight will make a big difference. I also added a little highlight on some of my leaves with this lighter green. I didn't do all of them. You could do all of them, or you could choose to do every other. I added the highlight in a really random pattern, and I think it turned out so cute. And that's all there is to the vines and berries pattern. Next, let's talk about the hollyberry pattern. For this pattern, the berries are our big focal point, so we're going to actually start with those. As you can see, the berry cluster is right at the very center of the ball as you're looking at it vertically. And on this side, there's 1 berry on top and 2 underneath. So go ahead and blend your color for the berries and roll out a ball for it, and then felt them on, keeping that pattern of 1 at the top and 2 underneath. When you're done with that, we're going to repeat the pattern on the opposite side of the ball. But there is going to be one major difference. Instead of doing 1 berry on top and 2 underneath, on the opposite side of the ball, we're going to do 2 berries on top and only 1 underneath. So we're kind of flipping the pattern on the other side. Make your second set of berries, making sure that it's directly on the opposite side from your first set of berries. And then we can move on to making our leaves. Of course, you can do these freehand, but we've included this stencil for you to cut out and trace on. And this can be placed on the ball in between any of the 2 berries. Once you have a placement that you like, go ahead and trace it onto the ball with the water-soluble fabric marker. Move the stencil to between the next 2 berries and trace it again. And just keep going until all of your leaves are marked. Next, blend your green color for your holly leaves, and then lay it out over the shape of the holly leaf that you just traced. You want your bundle of wool to be a little bit bigger than the area of the leaf that you just traced. Then start felting in one corner of the leaf, first focusing on getting the center felted down and then focusing on the edges. Use the traced shape of the leaf to guide you as you felt, and then work across the leaf until the whole thing is felted down. Once you have all of your leaves filled in, you can add a center vein to your leaf in a darker color by using that same twisting method that we learned earlier, and use a blend of white and green to add a slight highlight to your leaf, and use white to add a highlight to your berries. And with that, your holly berry ornament is done. Lastly, we're going to talk about how to do the forest of trees ornament. It has a solid ring of trees that goes all the way around the center of the ornament. So we're going to use our fabric marker to mark a ring around the middle of the ornament. It's easiest to lay the ball on its side to mark it and roll the marker around the center of the ornament to get your center line. Next, we can start to mark our tree shape. So cut out your 2 tree stencils, and starting with the bigger tree stencil, pick a spot on the ball to mark it, kind of centered on the line. Then mark that bigger tree again about 4 or 5 times around the ball. Sometimes you can place that tree a little higher on the line and sometimes a little lower, but you want all the trees to kind of stagger out to that center line. Now take the smaller of the 2 tree stencils and mark it in any gaps that were left. Don't be afraid to let some trees overlap. It's super cute that way. And the placement of these does not have to be perfect at all. Keep in mind with these that if you ever decide you don't like the placement, you can try again. The marker is water soluble, so it will come off easily. And once you're happy with the placement, you can start to fill in these trees in the same way that we filled in the holly leaves. So blend the color of green you want and just slowly start to fill in your trees. Keep in mind as you fill these in, if there are any places that the trees overlap, which tree you're wanting in front. That way you can layer your wool correctly. After you have all your trees filled in, you can start to add your highlight and shadow. For this one, I did all of my highlight on the top left edge of my trees and all of my shadows on the bottom right corner of my trees. Once you have that done, you can start to add your tiny ornaments to your tiny trees. And do this by rolling a little piece of white in your hand and then felting it on. I did 2 or 3 ornaments on each of my tiny trees, but you can do however many you like. You can keep all of your ornaments white or switch it up by adding red ornaments. If there's any of the water-soluble pen still showing through, you can just get a finger wet and rub that spot. And that is everything you need to know to make these adorable felted ornaments. I hope you had so much fun making these, and happy crafting!